Welcome back. In our last training session, we got our AFS cell up and running and we ran a couple AFS commands, but we really didn't understand what was going on underneath the covers. Today, I'd like to talk a little bit about how one authenticates into AFS and something about AFS users. We're going to look at the accounts that are set up automatically with the Vagrant setup that we have. And so by default, it's going to use a Vagrant user. So we're first going to connect back to the AFS client that we had been running before. In this case, AFS is still mounted, but we do not have any AFS tokens anymore on this system. The reason why is before this video started, I had gone and rebooted the system and deleted any tickets. I did this because I wanted to show how one actually authenticates to AFS. And so let's start by looking at how Kerberos works here. So I don't have any Kerberos tickets. That's how you run the command klist to do that. So you would typically want to type kinit, and it would ask you for your password. And you can see here it's already set up to try to authenticate to the vagrant at test.example.com Kerberos realm. But I don't know what the password is for that. And that's actually part of the problem with this example is that it's already set up on this machine to be able to get you tickets. So I'm going to cancel out of that. And I'm going to look in this directory and I can see there's these files with the key tab suffix. And what those are is they're stored passwords. They're not actually the passwords, but they're a key that's stored in a format that Kerberos understands. And so I'm going to start by using the kinit command, but I'm going to use this syntax -kt vagrant admin keytab. And I need to give an account for this, and I happen to know that it's vagrant/admin. And I can just do that. And now I have Kerberos tickets for this vagrant/admin. So the way that the Vagrant installer works is it sets up vagrant/admin as a super user in the AFS cell. That's why it's called /admin. And so now I have Kerberos tickets, but that doesn't actually give me any access to AFS quite yet. I have to get AFS tokens. And the simplest way to do that is to run aklog. aklog just basically uses your Kerberos tickets to get AFS tokens. The way you do that is you check that is you type tokens. So I've got AFS tokens. There's a couple things you can read in here. You can see when it expires. You can see I'm AFS ID 1. That's just because it was the first account that was created. So now that I have tokens, I can do things like release volumes and write into directories that have this account have access to it. The way you remove your tokens is you type unlog, and now, nope, I don't have any tokens. So let's aklog again, and let's look into AFS. You can see there's that test volume and my test file. I'm going to delete that file, and it says, yep, it's read-only. So I'm not in the correct directory. So let's go back up here and go to the .test. Oops. Okay, there, so it's gone. It's there. Now, why is it that my account can read and write here? Can every account do that? Well, there's a command you can use to examine what accounts and users can look at and do things in a particular AFS directory. So that command is called fs list_akl, and it defaults to looking in this directory. So you can actually give AFS, and it will tell you on any arbitrary AFS path what the ACLs are on it. So let's look back at this directory. So it has two ACLs assigned to it. There's a system auth user and a system any user. Now these are special AFS groups that the auth user includes all authenticated users, and any user means any user can do it. So that could be anyone who might not even have AFS tokens. So that means any computer that can reach this AFSL has the ACL RL, and R and L means read and list. That means that you can read the directory and you can list its contents. That's kind of like having RX on a directory in Unix parlance. So the auth user has this longer one that's RLIDWK, and each of those letters mean different things. So R and L we've talked about, read and list. I means insert, which means you can add files to the directory. D means you can delete things from the directory. W means that you can write to the directory. And K means that you can lock things in the directory, and the K stands for lock, which is somewhat confusing to new users. So let's look at things that you can do with the FS list ACL, or you can do things like set ACL. Now, how does that work? Well, here AFS is going to give us some examples. So we know the directory, and it's this one. And so we can say ACL. And so I could say, let's give the vagrant rate user RLIDWK. And now there's this vagrant user that has that. Now, there is a vagrant user and there's this vagrant admin user. And I haven't talked about those yet. So let's examine what that means. So here's a new command that we haven't seen before called PTS. So let's do PTS examine vagrant. Okay, so vagrant is this user, and there's a lot of information here, and we don't really need to go into great details other than the fact that it exists and its ID is 1000. That's not what we're using right now. I'm actually the vagrant admin user, and it is ID 1, and we saw that before whenever I ran the tokens command. Now, what's the difference between vagrant.admin and, remember, whenever I got authentication tokens, it's vagrant/admin. Well, this is a historical artifact of the fact that back whenever AFS was created with Kerberos, it was using Kerberos 4, and in that time Kerberos used dots to separate the principals. But now in Kerberos 5 we use slash. It's kind of confusing, but it's just one of those things that you'll pick up whenever you use OpenAFS. So I've created this added this ACL, but I'm still the AFS, or I'm still the vagrant/admin or vagrant.admin, depending on whether you're talking about Kerberos or AFS. I'm that user. So let's go back. I'm going to go unlog, and I still have those tickets. So I'm going to run this Kerberos command called kdestroy. And now I don't have tickets. Now, remember we saw this file here? That's for the vagrant one. So we can do something called kinit-kt vagrant key tab vagrant. So now I'm this vagrant account that you run tokens. Oops, I haven't run kinit or aklog yet. Aklog. Now I have the tickets, or I have the AFS token for that. So let's go back into AFS.test. So there's nothing there, but I could go, I could say touch test file 2. There it is. It's there now. Why was I able to create that? It's because I have those tokens, and the ACL says that I have that. Now, I don't want to have access to this anymore, so I'm going to try to remove this ACL. And I'm going to say Vagrant, none. It says, oh, you can't do that. Well, why? I was able to create it with the admin account. Well, here's the thing. The admin account has the ability to do all sorts of things that you can't do as a normal user. And now I'm basically a normal user. So I'd have to go back and get Kerberos tickets and AFS tokens as that user, as the /admin or .admin account. And I'm not going to do that right now. I just wanted to give you an example. This is one of the things that you cannot do if you are not an admin. So now that I've got this directory set up, remember I wanted to do things like VOS release. So if I tried that VOS release, it's going to say, no, you don't have permissions to do that. So this is one of the big differences between admin principals and non-admin principals is I don't have a whole lot of permissions to do AFS specific things as my regular user. This is the kind of account that you would give to someone who's just using the cell to read and write, and maybe they'll store their data and something, but they're not administering the cell. So I think that's enough for today, but I'd like everyone to try and run some of these commands and mess around with your cell if you've got a chance.